We know tomorrow also is the day for the U.S. elections, and we will be giving you a lot more insight into that. But, well, we'll be interspersing our discussions with a lot more conversation with the Executive Director for the PPP, and Richard Nyama is here. Thanks for joining me. A very good morning to you.
Thank you very much.
All right. And I know that the wife of your flag bearer was a Joy FM. Is that it?
I think he's there currently.
She's there. Okay.
Yeah.
So far, you're supposed to be in the courts again? Not necessarily.
Yeah, we are going back to the court.
Or you're just monitoring activities of the court?
Well, the EC decided to, if you like, appeal or apply for a review of the High Court decision that quashed their decision to disqualify Dr. Yindum at the Supreme Court. On Friday, we were there in court, and the court decided to adjourn to today. And so today at exactly 10 a.m., I believe the court will sit, and we are hoping that possibly the ruling will come out today.
But that also brings into question what's the straightforward position and mindset of the party is as to whether your flag bearer will be given the chance to be on the ballot sheet, etc., and for the election.
Well, it's a problem not only for the PPP, but a problem for the entire nation. Because here we are, we have 30 days to elections, and we don't know who is going to be on the ballot paper because of the actions of the Electoral Commission. Here we are, the CI94 is saying that 30 days before the presidential election, there must be notice of polls. That is law. 30 days before the elections, the December 7th, there must be notice of polls. As at now, the EC cannot go ahead and provide any notice of polls today. And today marks exactly 30 days to the 7th December. So it tells you that the problem that we are facing is not a problem for the PPP alone, but it's a problem that is engulfing the whole nation, and which the Electoral Commission has pushed us into.
What could be the ramifications, for example? I've heard this, I read about it, and talked to a number of legal luminaries about it. What really significantly you as a player in the stakeholder community this could have as far as the impact on the election?
Well, you remember there was a Mensah case about 2 years ago when the entire district assembly election and the entire amount of about 300 million that had been spent already had to be blocked and restarted all over again. That's because of some of these due processes. We are afraid that somebody will come up and say, well, CI94 said you should publish notice of polls 30 days before election, and you haven't done that, and so we are going back to court, and it will bring a whole lot of chaos. So for me, it is a very serious matter. The EC ought to back off from this belligerent posture it is showing to the political parties and allow for dialogue and for resolution of this matter so that we can all go into the election.
Well, we have to continue this very conversation. We still have in the studio the Executive Director for the PPP, Richard Nyama, and we will get to him shortly, but we're just getting some news from the wires that nurses at the Princess Marie-Louise Children's Hospital here in Accra, they have announced a decision to embark on strike, and significantly, what does it mean as well? So we have Derek Akosam on the line to give us a lot more updates. What really is happening currently at the hospital?
We are currently at the Princess Marie-Louise Children's Hospital, and we had to come here because we heard rumors of a strike by the nurses who work here. Apparently, it's a nationwide action by these nurses, and they say they've been paid for a couple of months, salary arrears being owed them and all of that. I want to speak to some mothers here who have brought their children to the hospital to be taken care of, and they have to, sadly, I didn't know about API one thing.
Pacha say doctors so much strike.
Doctors and nurses.
Almost doctors. Any nurses in a strike. And when I do me bayanda, no why she sa ma diachi. My bone so sa man and dream be an SME wofi. My ye and so no honton. Made in a ban of paya almost say or much strike. And I said, and call number be a diaquala and quala echo. They say minima drew cra me kotama and I say minim baby a media kwala be kwa e be kwa kwasa ne yare I say so yɛse ɔhyɛ anasɛ yɛ ɔhyɛ nso mpanimfoɔ hospital yɛnim baabi yɛde nkwalaa bɛkɔ nti ɔmo nyɛ bibi ma yɛ ɔmo nyɛ bibi mu ayɛ na ɛnyɛ saa de a yɛ nkwalaa na ɔmo yare yɛso yɛnim aduro bi a yɛbɛkɔ akɔtɔ ama nkwalaa na ɔmo ho bɛtɔ ɔmo.
So that's one mother who has had to take the daughter away because the nurses are on strike. She can't get medical attention for the child because the nurses are on strike. I want to speak to one other mother here. And also by home today.
I'm in a man about hospital, by some cost strike.
Now, how much are they into a strike?
Oh, man, almost into your mocha.
Almost into a mocha. Now, say into a big cost strike, I will share at the pa.
Another popular.
I don't know if
Among country are by noon to a mocano, Muntimin and Shankwalana.
Well, she's also expressing frustration at the turn of events because these nurses have to strike over unpaid salary. These nurses have to strike over unpaid salary, and they also have to strike because they claim that some working conditions are not as favorable as they want them to be. We'll keep our tabs on this because they say it's a nationwide action. We'll see what is happening across the other regions and get you the latest.
Well, so now you get a perspective as to why the current situation is pervasive at the Princess Marie Louise Children's Hospital here in Accra, where, according to what we're getting from the news wires, or also being confirmed by our correspondents, the nurses say they're on strike because of some exigencies they seem to be experiencing in their work. But we've also been joined by Mrs. Yvonne Ndum, the wife of the flag bearer of the PPP, Dr. Papa Kwesi Ndum. Thanks for joining me, madam.
You're welcome.
Okay, it's a pleasure to have you as well. But significantly, we're talking about what the outcome of the Supreme Court's ruling today on that very impasse that your flag bearer, your husband also has with the Electoral Commission and how that could have an impact. What do you think the impact could be?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. Okay, in a couple of hours, we will know the results, and then we'll be able to talk about its impact. So at the moment, I'll just let it be and see what will happen.
How would you describe the electioneering period of the PPP so far for this very particular period?
I think they've been working really hard, trying to get their messages across. They've got various messages that they want to get across to the populace, but it's been tough. You know that, they have not been in power before, so it's a bit difficult to get the necessary resources to have the impact that they really want. But I think they've made tremendous headways.
And I see you join your husband on the podium and on many of the campaign trails. How significant do you think his participation in the elections over the years has contributed to consolidating our electoral process and the democracy we have?
I think he has done a lot. Ghana is a multi-party system. That is what is in our constitution. It's not a two-party state. Okay, and I think efforts are being made to get us that way. But that's dangerous because, there will be a dominance, and then one party can dominate, and then we'll end up being a single-party state if we don't take care. Ghana is a multi-party system. If you go to the UK, for instance, they've been at this for centuries, and they have over 20 political parties. At the moment, they've got about 12 with representation in parliament. Yes, they have the dominant parties, but then the smaller ones contribute so that there will be a balance. Okay, we don't want to have a domination of, this sort of system that we have. And our party is more, our constitution, the way it was framed, actually encourages patronage, okay, an aggressive, a super hyper aggressive winner takes all. So your party is in power, it means everybody else is like on the fringes. And even to the point of social functions, when one party is in place, everywhere you go, you see them. Okay, the opposition, you can never see them.
They kind of nauseate you with their rank and file and their body politics.
Not even that. Even when it comes to social life, even when it comes to cocktails, when we have diplomatic functions and all of that.
It's all basically about them.
Basically about
So everybody
them.
is relegated to the background.
To the background.
And that is what the PPP wants to, that very jinx.
Yes.
Okay.
So the PPP says we all should look at the Constitution because there are certain fundamental things that have to be taken care of before development will really take off. Okay, and if we don't do that, we will be where we are because we've been practicing this since 1993. Is it 1993?
Since 1992.
1992. Or the
Well, we went for the
First
polls in
presidential election
1992.
1993.
So we can say either way, it's
So
it's
what I'm
correct.
saying is that it's like we've reached where we can really go, okay, with the two-party system. We need to encourage a strong third party or even a fourth party as well, so that there will be balance in the parliament, so that they can sway, you know, and there will not be a dominating, you know, party. Because if you really read the Constitution, it was framed to perpetuate one particular party.
Yeah.
Okay. And at the moment, if we do
and their level of dominance.
yes, yes. And so we have to be careful. And everybody who is sitting on the fence, you know, you need to get involved. Politics, you know, I used to think, like everyone else, that politics is dirty and, you know, but as, you know, I get on in life, I realize that it is our duty, everybody, me, you, to really be involved and to contribute as much as they possibly can to make us get out of this position that we are in. I was listening to Joy on my way here, and they were talking to two Ghanaians who have lived in the US for a long time, and they are petrified of being sent, deported to Ghana. Why would you be petrified of being deported
To your country.
to your own country? If the country that we've built, if it had developed that people are comfortable, okay, they know they can have a job that will pay them living wage, they can afford the bare necessities of life, who will want to, you know, escape to another country and actually engage in menial jobs?
Maybe
just
they should
because-
come and ask you. You've lived significantly,
Well,
some significant part of your life in the US.
Well,
so
I
if you do the comparative analysis, you can blame them, can
no.
you?
Well, so that's the answer. It means our country is not good. That's why when you do a comparative analysis, it goes the other way. It doesn't, you know,
Favor us.
favor us. That's the answer.
All right. But do you think you're making the impact that for all the things that Mrs. Indum talks about, you intend making on the campaigns this very season?
Well, let me say it's a privilege to be on the same set with Mrs. Indum the first time. I think the PPP has worked very hard. I agree with her on that note. We've worked so hard, but the system we have right now makes it difficult for a smaller party to be able to make an impact within a short time. Okay, for example, we have a government in power. That government manages all aspects of the economy, including district assemblies, because the government appoints the DCE as well as about 30% of the membership of the district. So you can't say that, oh, PPP has won, let's say, AMA, and we've been able to modernize AMA. So when you give us the presidency, we can, you know, do better.
And you say that's bad?
Yeah, that's bad, and that's why the PPP is fighting against some of those things, okay? So we've worked so hard. Now we have better parliamentary candidates who are more experienced. They did so well in 2012, and their chances of winning the parliamentary seats are higher. Dr. Papa Kwesi Ndum on the other side has championed the idea of job creation, and today in Ghana, everywhere that you go, you mention jobs and everybody knows it is Dr. Indum. It will interest you to know that a classmate of mine who is now a lawyer, his wife called me yesterday. My classmate is an NDC person, a serious one. His wife called me yesterday in front of his husband to tell him that, well, just because Dr. Indum has gone to open Rara Rice, which is in her hometown, she's going to vote for PPP, and she's telling me right in front of her husband. So the idea of the job creation, Ghanaians have understood that we need an experienced pair of hands that has brought results to be in government before we can bring the people who have been deported from the US. If they are sure that they are going to have decent jobs, they're going to get better jobs here, they are going to be paid well, they won't be petrified for being deported to come back to Ghana. After all, Ghana is your hometown. And so for me, we have worked so hard, our message has gotten down to the people, And perhaps that's why state institutions like the UKU, CID, the EC, and the rest, which are all working together with the government, are ganging up against to make sure that we don't get on the ballot paper.
Well, wild, or if not, I can say spurious conspiracy theories, Richie, seem to be. Who wants to gang up against the PPP? You know?
I have no idea. Okay, but what I'll tell you is
Do you have a feeling like that?
Well, I'll tell you, we need to look at our constitution. As Nee was saying, if the president has all the powers, okay, to appoint and to unappoint, okay, then there will be patronage, okay, in the system. And so whatever the government's agenda is, that's what will be carried on. Now, he mentioned that in other places, if you go to the UK, for instance, or you go to the US, which I'm quite familiar with, even the school superintendent is elected. The fire chief is elected. The governor who is like the regional minister is elected. The DC, who is like the mayor, is elected. Now, we were supposed to have taken both the American Constitution and the UK Constitution and to come up with a good one that will work well for us. But I'll tell you, it was cherry-picked. Okay, they picked what would be good for them to perpetuate their dominance. Okay, so when you have something like that, then you can't just say that, you know, we will grow like we are.
It's discriminatory.
It's extremely discriminatory and patronizing. Okay, that's what it is. So if the government has the power to appoint all these heads of institutions, every single institution in Ghana, the head of every single institution, government institution in Ghana, is appointed by the president. Okay, so even if you have a private enterprise and you want to advance, you will still have to go to them, okay, for your licenses, for clearance, for whatever. You will meet them, and they are all government appointees. So they toe the line, invariably.
Party people.
Right. So what happens is that we are sort of, our democracy has actually gotten to where it can. Okay, it can go and has stagnated. Okay, and if we don't take care, as I've said, we will move on towards a one-party state. Right now, we are into this, as I mentioned, aggressive, you know, hyper winner takes all. Many people, well, not many, I would say a few people have written and spoken against it, against the winner takes all kind of mentality. But it's not going to change because the Constitution backs it. Okay.
When you go around with your husband and the PPP, etc., and for example, I know that John Sterling is your brother.
Right.
He's standing for the KEA
yes.
Seat as well. Do you get a feeling that the ordinary Ghanaian electorate is warming up to this whole idea of making sure that there's a third force of a political party that is making an impact?
I think the KEA is warming up, okay, but it takes more than the KEA. It takes you, it takes everybody in the media to realize that and to push for what I'm talking about. But if we don't, you know, I always say that the electorate also, you know, can take part of the blame for where we are. If you plant a garden, you know, you are responsible for what you grow in it. So we vote, we elect our representatives, okay? So we are also responsible. Some people do not even attempt to go and vote. People who really could vote the right way will not, you know, want to go and stand in the sun and vote, okay? But they are doing us, the country, a disservice. We need people like my brother, John Sterling, who is quite articulate, quite intelligent, who will present the views of, I'm sure that's what parliamentarians are supposed to do, to go and represent the views of their constituents and not just to look for ministerial positions, but to go and represent their constituency and to go and argue in parliament about what it is that is needed in their constituency. If you take KEA, for instance, or for the central region for that matter, at the moment, it's one of the poorest, you know, regions in Ghana. It's the fourth poorest region after the northern region, you know, upper east, upper west, and then the central region. If you talk about school dropouts, they are number one. If you talk about health, if you talk about cholera, if you talk about malaria, you know, they are number one. I mean, as we sit here, 10 people, you know, have cholera in the central region, and none of the media people are even talking about it. Whereas in developed countries, in America, for instance, if 6 people get malaria, you will see the onslaught. It's a totally big deal. We don't care, all right? But what we need to do is we need spokespersons who will go to Parliament and not be afraid, you know, to get up and say what it is that they want. And if it's a third party, for instance, they know that they are not towing any line. Okay, they are just representing their constituency. So I hope that people would just vote for John Sterling to go to Parliament to make an impact.
Yeah, it's on the, this one is free adverts. It's okay, you can do the campaigning. But from what is I seem to like.
Thank you.
Yeah, I seem to like her. She seems to be having a very strong view. Reminds me of Nana Akufo-Addo Rawlings, who is very strong on her ideas and what needs to be done right, etc. But if we are supposed to do the change and the change of mindset, do you think we have room for that culturally and stereotypically and the way the way we are brought up and the way we tend to have a lot more loyalty, etc.?
Well, I think there's always a room. There's always a room. It's just a question of how big is the room, okay? And I think these activities we are having here on the media is part of the room for the change of mindset. You know, when we started this whole idea about PPP in 2012, it wasn't like this. It was difficult getting people to support our ideas. But these days, I get amazed. Sometimes I meet people I have never met before, and they are articulating the views of the PPP as if we had sat them down and really schooled them on what to see. And that tells me that people are listening, people are paying attention, and they are beginning to realize that there's the need for them to be on board so we can bring a better change for this country. So for me, I would say there's a room for that.
And we have to let you go. You're going on Joy 1997.
Right.
But
very soon. You also need to realize that in 2012, the party had been in existence for like barely 9 months, and they were the third. Okay, the third force.
And this time,
no
we hope that you can make a significant.
Yeah, after 4 years, I would think that everybody would open their minds and help PPP make a significant.
You would lobby I vote for the PPP then?
Yes.
You have to.
Yes.
Okay, so Mrs. Yvonne Indom would have to go to radio. That's Joy 99.7. So if you have tuned in, you can also listen to her there. But at the same time, we're still doing a lot more of discussions. And now, Richard, if you see the PPP today, how significantly has it impacted or perhaps changed the mindset of the ordinary person from the usual what it should be NPP and NDC? Well, do you feel it in the campaigns? Do you feel it in everything that we do?
Yeah, I think that the PPP has done a lot, and it has significantly changed a lot of minds. Like I told you, when we started in 2012, it wasn't like this. It was very difficult getting people to even understand our message. And what everybody said was that, oh, by you people, you just came. We don't know anything about you except that they knew Dr. Indom, who had been in the political game for quite some time. And so today, let me give you some typical examples of what PPP has done to the politics of today. Today, as we speak now, jobs has become the major campaign tool of both President Mahama and Nana Akufo-Addo. Why? Because the PPP has been pushing so much for jobs, and they have realized that they cannot go anywhere and speak without talking about jobs. Again, let's even talk about this election of DCs as we are talking about. The PPP has pushed it so much that today the NPP has been forced to also come out and say it will also elect DCs when given the opportunity. And NDC is trying to dance around the matter of, electing DCs. They are saying they want to appoint some 5 people, send them to interview, and then allow them to be voted upon. Even when you talk about corruption, the PPP has been able to shift the focus from the normal blame game, where NDC will blame MPP and say, you even chop some in government, and then NDC will also blame back the MPP, to talking about the issue of appointing an independent attorney general. Today, it has become one of the major topics, and it's because the PPP has been pushing it consistently. And so when we want to measure the impact of the PPP on the body politics of Ghana, it is so real. There are so many examples to be cited, and there are so many things to say. Now, we are pushing so much so we can have a lot of people in parliament. We want to be able to hold the balance in parliament. We want to be able to determine how policy direction should move, because for all we know, Ghana, it has always been whether I'm MPP or not, and whether I support the idea the NDC has brought. Now, if we're able to get a very significant number of PPP MPs in parliament, that is going to change, because you can't just say, this is my party, so I'm voting for my party. You can't form the majority. You need a third party, and that party is not going to toe on party lines. And so Ghanaians are going to
so
be
you're
the
saying that
beneficiaries.
if we go for a second round, you're not going to support the MPP, for example?
Why? Why should we? What if we have the higher vote and we need the support of another party? It is possible. Okay. It is entirely possible that John Mahama can get 30%, Akufo-Addo can get 30%, and Dr. Ndum can get 30%. And we could be in the second round ourselves. So the issue of supporting any party, why? Would we spend all this money and time just to go and support another party? Can they pay for our resources? We have something that we are interested in. We are interested in gaining governmental power and influence to be able to better the lives of Ghanaians. And so our policies are there. If there's a second round and there has to be an alliance, it depends on which party is willing to implement our policies. It's not a matter of whether we like this party or not. No, it is about Ghana, and it is about our party. We can't make a mistake that will jeopardize the future of our party, because we are building a party that is interested in being in government to be able to better the lives of the Ghanaians.
Okay, I have this one from Stephen Amankwa, who is giving us a message from Asan Krigwa, and he says that the PPP seem to have made a lot more inroads in this year's election than they previously had. But I'm wondering whether they could get the right votes to become the significant force that they want to be. And we also have John Isiamwa, and he's given this message from Obuasi. PPP has made a lot of impact. We need to respect them. Do you think that people really respect you for what you've achieved, and so modestly say that you have achieved that, but perhaps will think differently when they have to make the last-minute decision of voting?
Well, let me say it this way. You know, Ghana has a political history. Since 1992, there has been so many other parties apart from the MPP and the NDC. In fact, there are a lot of parties that were formed in election year. And right after the election year, those parties collapsed. I can mention a number of them. There's National Reform Party, there was Democratic People's Party, or what, Obeda Samuel and Co. I mean, there are a lot of them, okay? And so when the PPP was formed in 2012, many of the people who call themselves experts, I don't want to mention names, but all what they said was that the PPP will crumble after 2012 elections because they have seen the history, and that is how Ghana is. Well, unfortunately for them, we have proved them wrong. And the PPP is even making inroads to places that people thought we couldn't get there. Yesterday, like many other days, I was in Ablekuma West, and I spoke to some women, and I told them that, well, if anybody tells you that if you vote for the PPP, you have wasted your vote, it means the person thinks you are not intelligent. The person thinks you do not know that 1 + 1 is 2, okay? Because if I decide to vote and you decide to vote, there are 2 votes. And if a third person decides to vote, we've got 3 votes. So there's no way you can convince me that if I vote for PPP, I have wasted my vote. A wasted vote is actually the one that you voted for a party, that party won power, all right, but they couldn't implement what you wanted them to implement for you. And that is why we are telling the people of Ghana that since 1992, they have been wasting their vote in one way or the other. We have identified that the wasted vote propaganda is the biggest challenge of the PPP, because everybody agrees that Dr. Ndum can do a far better job than Mahama. Everybody agrees that Dr. Ndum can do a far better job than Nana Akufo-Addo, but they simply think that we cannot win. And that is why, if you monitor us this year, we have always been hammering on the mantra of wasted vote and explaining to Ghanaians that You don't just say you have wasted your vote if you voted for someone who did not win, but you waste your vote actually when you vote for someone who wins and is unable to do what you are expecting the person to do. Okay? And let me tell you this, look, every dispensation needs a certain kind of leader. Okay? And when you go into the Bible and the Quran, you will be told that every person has his own talent. Okay? Everybody has his own talent. In the 1950s, we needed a charismatic leader like Kwame Nkrumah who could get us out of independence. And so we had to go in for him. He had the charisma, he had the energy, he could stand in front of the white man and tell him, leave my country. Today in Ghana, we need a different kind of leader. We are in economic mess. Talk of Dumso, talk of all the strikes, talk of all the challenges we are facing, and it will come back to financial mismanagement. Okay? And so we are saying that we have a candidate who is talented in financial management. This is not the time to go and vote for a lawyer. This is not the time to go and vote for a communication expert. This dispensation in Ghana today, in 2016, we need somebody with a wherewithal, with ability to manage little resources to provide results. And that person is Dr. Papa Kwesi Indom.
Thank you very much. Richard Niyama is the Executive Director for the Progressive People's Party, the PPP. Thanks for joining me. And where's your campaign trail heading next?
Well, let me say our presidential candidate just returned from WA this morning, where he was there to help some parliamentary candidates. Our vice presidential candidate is also on her way from the Volta region to Accra. Obviously, they all want to come and witness what the Supreme Court will say. But after that, they will disperse again
and go back into the trenches and go and campaign. Thanks for joining me, Richard.
Thank you very much.
Niyama is Executive Director for the PPP.